but then they've already had the revolutionary mindset in their heads. Okay? Is it just like George Washington was a British Army officer? It's a little bit like this. And then there were also publications called the Revolutionaries or something like that was widely spread within the new army. And so that became the major revolutionary force. It was actually the Qing army in itself. And Yuan Shikai in Beijing was actually very smart. In his own 6 units, not a single revolutionary. But in the south, where the control was much less, a lot more. Okay? And then they tried a few other times, and one very famous one that Taiwan likes to talk a lot about it, or history books like to talk about it, is 1907, where apparently Sun Yat-sen was actually at the scene. They were fighting, and he even shot a cannon at the Qing. Turns out that they saw a flag, like a Republican flag. It turned out it was the foreigners who told the Qing government that there was a flag. And the Qing army then had to go and take it away. And there was no way that the Sun Yat-sen could have fired, because that cannon was a Qing cannon that was facing at French Indochine. So, and at the time, the technology would not be able to switch it to the other side. So all the major stories you hear about Sun Yat-sen fighting, that's the only story, by the way, didn't happen, unfortunately. That was 1907. Do you have any questions up there now?
Well, it's just a bigger question, that is, and I don't know if it applies to this, but when or has China ever been close to a democracy? Would it have been at this point?
Precisely. I'm going into that. It was actually very close, yet so far. Yeah. And it's all up to what if, if you read any of Chinese history books, the major debate is, what if the Empress Dowager did not die then? What would have happened? And we'll get into that. But I need to give you all the ingredients right before that. And so the major thing was really about up until 1908. So one side, this side. By 1908, it was 3 years had passed. So it's 9 years into the constitution. It's modernizing. It's developing industry. It's developing a new education system. It's developing a new military. Outside of China, there are 2 sides. One side sided with Guangxu. They're still criminals. They're still wanted. But then they believe that China should go into the constitutional monarchy. So they are actually more consistent with each other. And then you have a bunch of revolutionaries. Okay? In 1908, when everything was going on November the 14th, Guangxu died. On the 15th, Cixi died. Yeah, it's amazing, right? Because they are like 36 years apart by birth, but 36 hours apart by death. So now what's interesting is that Guangxu died so suddenly. What happened? Like, who killed? Did he die of natural causes, or did he die of something else? Turns out 100 years later, in 2008, they actually opened his tomb, looked at his body, and actually did an autopsy and realized that his body had like 100 times more than a person could handle in poison. So he was poisoned to death. Now, who poisoned him to death? Maybe Cixi. Because Cixi, before Guangxu died, had Prince Chun's son to be the next emperor. And obviously that's the emperor
Last emperor.
Puyi. That's his son. Puyi then became emperor. So this is, if you watch like The Last Emperor, and you see like that night when like they just dragged him out, that was the night. That was the night that dragged him out. It's exactly the same scene and same place as dragging Guangxu out 34 years prior. Now now the last emperor Puyi, he was 3. He was actually 2.5. He's like emperor at 3 because China, you add 1 more year. But actually, he was born in 1906, and then actually.
So you're a year old when you were born.
Yeah. So in 1908, he was only 2.5 years old. Actually, Puyi was born in the same year as Sir Run Run Shaw. Sir Run Run Shaw just died last year, right? So you can imagine how old Sir Run Run Shaw was. Yeah. But Puyi became emperor, and the emperor, they both died. Now, Cixi, with her gone, what happened was, how do you handle all the provincial people who are loyal to her? And also, Qing and Na, they're older, right? Because when she died, Prince Chun became the prince regent. He became prince. So he was, in effect, he took over at a ripe age of 26. Wait, 1882, yeah, 1908. Yeah, he was 26. And then in the whole government, they start pushing these old guys away and had his two, get this, younger brothers to become the head of both the army and also the navy. And a bunch of his cousins. So it's a bunch of, they're all like Zai, right? Remember, like I was saying, like their generation, the name is Zai, Zai Zibei. So all their cousins and brothers of his generation, they all hated Yuan because you remember Yuan was the guy who went against Guangxu, but more importantly because he had all the military power around Beijing. So they're trying to kill him. Okay, trying to kill him. But then Zhang Zhidong and Qin Wang, they are like friends with Yuan. But more importantly, if you just kill Yuan, all the army around the Beijing, all of Yuan's army will come and attack Beijing. So you cannot kill him. So Prince Chun was like, you know, Yuan, didn't you have a foot infection like when you were 7? I don't think it's well yet, right? So why don't you go home and rest? So Yuan went to rest. Back to his place, Henan. Okay, so he's gone for a few years. And Prince Chun, when he became Prince Regent, obviously was he used a lot of his, again, younger cousins. His policies were supposed to be, because after Empress Dowager, a lot of people were saying, oh, maybe great, like you have a young guy who's been to Germany, been around Europe, maybe he can modernize, right? And so, oh, another thing, Zhang Zhidong died in 1909. So if you look at it, all the generation that fought for the Empress Dowager during the Taiping Rebellion, they're all gone, along with Empress Dowager. So all the supposedly loyal people are all gone. And so we're left with Prince Chun and his young cousins ruling the country. And obviously, one of the things is, after the end of the imperial exams, China became extremely, like the Chinese scholars, if you think about it, right? Let's say you're like 30, and you've studied Confucius and Mencius your whole life, hoping to become like an imperial scholar and then become the Prime Minister of China. The next day you realize that everything you've studied is a waste. So you've got nowhere to go. So you could have gone to go into the new army, or go to Japan, but if you don't have money, go to the new army. So you'd be pretty resentful of the regime, right? So that's why in the new army, there was a huge resentment against the regime, especially in the south. And especially when you go to Japan, Sun Yat-sen is in Japan, right? So all the promotional materials is about how bad the Qing government is and everything. So when you go back to become an official, or you become an army officer, you're against the government as well. So now we're saying modernization is good, but all the modernization thing then became the major, you can say, swamps of revolution. Okay, and now the biggest thing is in 1910 onwards, they're saying we can't have. It's way too long, and another 9 years of from 1908 onwards, another 9 years. So the Constitution of 1917 is too long. We must have it earlier. And so then it was actually, when you talk about, was this the closest thing to democracy? Yes. Because on a provincial level, we started having local congress. Okay, local congress. Okay, obviously it's not universal suffrage, but basically who could have voted on a local level? You need, if you're a businessman, you need assets of more than 5,000 yuan. You can't be crazy. So landowner? Actually,
landowner?
Maybe, or educated. So if you do a study of all the provinces that were eligible to vote, it comes up to, obviously you have to be male, over 25. If you want to run for office, over 35. So for the voters, it's about 0.4%.